Good job making it this far. Things are going to get more and more fun starting in this section because we're now learning real tools that real companies use and that will get you hired. And development also becomes a lot faster because we're using these tools to make us build websites faster and better. So let's talk about React. What do we have before React? Well, as I've mentioned before, we had jQuery. jQuery was, as you remember, very imperative. Writing code was like mixing ingredients sequentially. If this happens, then do this, and then do that, but also if this happens, then do this. And it created a lot of inconsistencies. And if you remember the DOM manipulation section, well, that is really, really difficult. And constantly keeping track of what changed and what to change is a huge mess. And it creates for very slow development. And as your website gets more and more complex, it becomes very, very hard to scale, which means it becomes very hard for teams of developers to manage it. Now, React was created at Facebook. As you know, Facebook is a pretty big app, and a lot of things need to happen for it to work well. And they had this problem, and they created React as a way to solve this issue and be able to have a tool that allows them to build websites in a nice, predictable way that you can have multiple developers working on it at the same time. And I like to use the analogy of a bread machine. Using React is kind of like that. You just throw in the ingredients, and React does all this magic underneath the hood and puts out a website. So it's very reliable and very consistent. And it does one thing really, really well, and that is the view. It manages to make our websites, the DOM, change in predictable ways that is easy to scale and easy to manage. And the beauty of React is that because it's just the view, it doesn't necessarily mean it's only for browsers. As a matter of fact, React can be used with mobile devices to build native apps. It's used in virtual reality apps. You can build desktop apps with React. Anywhere that has a view, well, React can use it. And big companies, as I mentioned before, Facebook and Instagram use React, and Netflix uses React. Whenever you browse through movie choices, well, that's using React underneath the hood. It's a very, very useful tool and in very high demand. So I'm excited to talk about React and teach you this valuable skill in this section. Now, in order to understand React, there's a few things that we want to go over. And these are principles that are very valuable that have been learned over the years by developers. One is the idea of thinking in components. Up to this point, we've just built websites. Everything is just one JavaScript file, one CSS file, one HTML file. But wouldn't it be nice if the web was a network of these small components? Think of them as Lego blocks, where everybody builds a specific Lego block, and you just combine these Lego blocks to create your website. That is the idea that React established. Let's use this as an example. You first have atoms, which, as you can see here, are icons and little small indivisible elements on your website, such as images, there's some text, and you divide these into atoms. From there, you form molecules or combine atoms that have similar functionality, such as the navigation bar down here. You combine individual atoms to add some functionality. And then you have organisms, again, a little bit bigger than molecules that combines to a bigger scale functionality. And then finally, you have templates, the combination of these organisms to give you an idea of how your app or website should look. Finally, you have your pages, that is, the page of your app. And if you think in components, as this image demonstrates, well, you're able to build small little components that you can reuse and put on different parts of the web page. For example, this back button here, If I build a React component that is the back button, I can now use it on multiple pages and I don't have to rewrite the code. If I wanted the navigation bar to be used in different areas of the app, well, again, I don't need to rewrite the code. I write it once and I can reuse it. As a matter of fact, I can even share it with the world. And this idea of components makes React amazing because right here I have a website that has React components built by somebody. And we can reuse these. And it's not just CSS and HTML, but real functionality, such as navigation bars and sign-in forms. I can just download this React component and attach it to my website. And because of the way React is structured, it doesn't really need to know about the rest of the web page. It's just its own Lego block that works by itself. By reducing dependencies on other parts of the website, I can just plug this anywhere I want. Another important concept with React is the idea of one-way data flow. The best way to describe it is by looking at this tree-like structure. In here, you see that we have a parent, some children, and then those children have their own children, and those children have their own children. And the idea with React is that data flows from top to bottom and never the other way around. That is, if these red, let's call them components, change, well, in that case, only their children know about the change. The parents don't really care about the change because, well, the direction of the data flow is just always downstream. So if we go back to the idea of components, if we had a website built on components, and this was the page, and these were organisms, and then molecules, then atoms, well, in that case, the red components change, and then only the ones below it, as you can see here in blue, know of this change. And based on that, they will act accordingly and change as well. Now, without actually having a problem, it's hard to understand this concept, but trust me, this is a very important concept that React brought in. It creates a lot of really nice bug-free code. And it is an idea that you'll understand more and more as we start to code in React. The next thing is the idea of virtual DOM. You know what the DOM is, the document object model. And we also learned that one of the most important things as a developer is to minimize the amount of DOM manipulation that we do because, well, web browsers have to work really, really hard to achieve that. And it reduces the performance of the web page plus increases bugs. I think this image demonstrates what React does really well. Beforehand, we were the painters. We told the DOM exactly what to do. Remove this element, then put this in, and then also add this and color this way. With React, we have this React bot. And the React bot creates something called the virtual DOM. Virtual DOM is just a JavaScript object. And this JavaScript object that just describes our website, the current state of the website. And we just give it that object to React, and the React bot will automatically make changes to the DOM and paint the picture in the most optimum way possible. So we just tell it, hey, this is the object, this is what we want in the DOM, and the React takes care of DOM manipulation for you. Remember how annoying it was to do query selector all, then grab elements by ID, and then doing all these event handlers? Well, React takes care of that. So again, the virtual DOM is just a copy of the DOM that's in a JavaScript object, and then React, underneath the hood, just changes the view. And that's why it's able to work outside of browsers, and you can use things like VR and mobile devices because React is the machine, and what the canvas is on, well, we can change the canvas to whatever we want. Finally, React has a great ecosystem. It is probably one of the biggest ecosystems in JavaScript right now, and there are so many tools that work with React. As a matter of fact, the developer community is so big that any problem you have, there's most likely a chance that somebody else has had it and has posted it on the internet and you can find solutions for. You can find React packages in NPM. You can use it with Node. There's Webpack and Babel that you can use with it. It's just a really good ecosystem that uses the latest JavaScript technology to build websites in a really nice, elegant way. Now, one thing that I want to warn you about. In this section, we're going to see code like this. And it's going to look very strange at first. It's like the same way when you looked at JavaScript the first time. It seemed like a whole new different world. It will when you first look at this. But trust me, knowing what you know about JavaScript, this becomes really, really easy. You have classes that extends the React component, and this is how we build components. We have constructor, again, that we've seen in advanced objects. And then each class has a mandatory render function that you just tell it what this clock should render. And as you can see, it looks like HTML, isn't it? It's not exactly HTML, but the syntax is very similar. So even by looking at this, you see that this clock component, again, this Lego block, just returns a hello world h1 tag with an h2 that says it is, and then the time. Again, just to give you a heads up, you're going to hear words like props and state and React components, but these are just language syntax that you'll learn. And it's actually quite easy once you get used to it. So don't worry, this is all going to make sense by the end of it. And you know what? We're going to be building a pretty cool app. It's called RoboFriends. And we're going to build this app that, well, searches through your robot friends. And you can find their contact information. And as you can see, it updates live. It's super fast. It's responsive. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to build this pretty fast just to show you how powerful React is. All right. I'm really excited to get into this section. You're going to have a lot of fun. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.